Okay, hi everybody. We are coming toward the end of this semester. We're really barreling right into the end of this semester. So not a lot of time left to be together. And I have to say that I've really enjoyed teaching this class. You all have been absolutely splendid. I've enjoyed reading your stories and getting to know you a little bit through them and working with you. And of course, we still have a week left, so I'm not saying goodbye yet. But I do want to go over this week's assignment because it's a little different from the assignments that you've seen so far. Okay, so what have I done? I have created an assignment that asks you to read stories like an editor. You all have come a very long way with your reading and your understanding of what makes a good story. So an editor with a literary journal, and some of you have taken book and magazine editing or taking it and have a sense of what a mission statement is for a literary journal, where you actually create a few lines just stating what is this literary journal all about, right? And then you select stories that adhere to that mission statement. So you're kind of doing the same thing, not as formalized as that, but I want you to think about what your own aesthetic is. So what fits into your taste in terms of literary fiction, but also thinking about what we have studied this semester. So I've created a list of questions here. I'm going to ask you to add to this list. And this is really, I'm giving you 3 stories. And you have space to, in this hypothetical literary journal, publish one of these stories. So you might think all 3 are very well written. I mean, all 3 of them have been published. They are writers that have been published. And you might think that you would love to publish all 3, but you can't. You can only publish one, and this is actually true all the time. In fact, usually there's maybe 500 submissions and you can publish one of them. So this is just a taste of what that is like. And I'm asking you to read this week like an editor. So the 3 stories, one of them is more in the flash fiction camp, but the other 2 are not too long either. I suggest that first you read through the questions that I have here under Monday's assignment. So really thinking about what you're looking for as you read. And I want you to add your own questions to this list, please. And I do want you to let me know what those questions are when you answer your discussion board. Look in your text, think about what we've been discussing, think about what you've chosen to look at when you've responded to model assignments, to model stories, and write questions accordingly, all right? What's gonna help you to dig into this text, to really understand that this is the particular story that I think best represents my aesthetic, the aesthetic that I've been really cultivating this entire semester, okay? So it is, yes, you are never gonna get away from just straight up good literary taste, your own taste, right? There are stories that I can read and I say, oh, I think that's a great story. I'm completely not interested in it. Just doesn't grab me as a person, even though I can see that writer is really technically very, very talented. Okay, but the subject matter, maybe the genre, whatever it is, just doesn't really float my boat. That is going to happen. That is just the case of human nature, right? But that's a certain set of standards. But then there are other standards, and those are the ones that we've been looking at this semester, really, where you can argue more, this character's just not very round, right? We're not getting enough of a real person on the page, or we're getting too much cliche. So the originality isn't really there in the story, right? We are getting no tension at the very beginning, or we are not really getting voice in this story. Okay, so all those kinds of questions that do depend upon a certain set of standards, and those are the standards we've been talking about, looking at closely throughout this semester. Early on in my teaching career, I remember students saying, well, it really is just up to your subjective taste whether or not you like something. Yes, but if that were all that art is, and looking at art were, then we wouldn't really need a class, right? A class is for cultivating that understanding of what good technique is. Okay, so that's what I'm asking you to do with this assignment. And I hope you have fun with it. I really do. You are going to be reading 3 stories, so that's kind of the major piece of that is what you're doing this week, is reading, digging into reading. And it's not just pleasure reading. I want you to pay attention as you read to how differently you're reading now than you were at the beginning of or before this class, before you engage so much, because those of you who have done the work, who have really been reading and paying attention and challenging yourselves with some of these techniques that we've been covering, I think you're going to recognize a deep and profound and interesting difference in how you read now as opposed to how you read before class began. Okay, because it should be honing your aesthetic and also your understanding of what makes a story that really works on multiple levels. I don't think you're going to be, for instance, intrigued by the same stories that you were before. You're going to see gaps and holes and places where maybe before you thought, this is kind of boring, but I don't know why. Now you're going to know why. All right. So I am asking you to read these 3 stories. Again, 3 very good, well-written stories, and you just have to choose one. So you're going to be considering these questions here. And in a 300-word response, you are going to fill in this. First, you're going to begin with, I, Martha Witt, is EIC, that's editor-in-chief of Pipistrello Literary Journal, chose to publish whichever story I chose by the author, right? The editors at Pipistrello Literary Journal strive to publish work that, and you're going to put in your highest mission, your priorities, your interest. What is most important to you now that you've really been thinking about it when you read a story? Is there something that you might want to highlight or emphasize? I selected the story that you selected for the following reasons, okay? And then you're going to go on to explain why you selected the story that you selected. I do want you to provide quotes from that story to illustrate the techniques or qualities that are important to you as an editor. So if you are telling us that the main character is really round and interesting, has a lot of contrasting traits, well, then show us. Please do try to use our terminology as much as possible. You've been studying it, know it, bring it in, define what you're looking for, right? So that when you are writing this essay response, you're making it meaty, substantive, and specific, so that I know that you know what all these terms mean and how to apply them to a work of fiction. Okay, I hope this makes sense. And if it doesn't, please reach out. I'm happy to answer any questions, obviously. And along those lines, because this is our almost last week, or next to last week, if you would like to set up a chat with me, please reach out. I always encourage you to do that, but especially now towards the end of the semester. The podcast, as you all know, is due by May 6th. That is a hard deadline. I start a summer class shortly after this one ends, so I'm going to be gearing up for that, and I can't really be getting work later than May 6th, and I also have to turn it around for grading. So, it really does have to be a hard deadline, which is why we started this podcast so early on. Please, if there are any issues, let me know. I do have a discussion board provided here for you to write down what's going on with your podcast. Just update me. Okay, that is it for now. Again, if you have any questions, please reach out. But otherwise, happy reading this time. Well, writing too. You're writing too, but more reading. Okay, and I will be reading your writing shortly.